Fred, it's great to meet you. We know a number of people, mutual friends, and it was really great talking to some of them to get a little intel on you, like Carl Hyacin,
Intel
Harry
sounds.
Spear,
and Steve.
But at the outset, you've been a dentist in Big Pine for 40 plus years. You're close to Key West. Great friends with Buffett and some of these other guys, Carl Hyacin. I mean, look at this beautiful bird you built, Roadkill. We're going to get to there here in a little bit. And I know you have a big history with Burning Man, so you've been exposed, bro.
Yeah.
So, Fred, let's get right to the beginning. How did you get down here to the Keys?
Well, I was essentially raised in Fort Lauderdale. I moved there when I was 10. We lived under river, had a boat from the time I was 12, and just ran around the river with all the other kids with boats and just pretty much freedom. And then I started diving more. And then I came to Sea Camp, which is a marine science camp on Big Pine Key, in 1965. And then kept coming back every summer and was a budding young marine biologist. And then the draft interfered, and it was either go to medical school, divinity school, or dental school. So I went to dental school, which turned out to be the most fortuitous thing I could do. Because number one, I got to live here and have a practice. Not many people that I know ever got to come back and live here and make a decent living, and then do something so rewarding as dentistry, which was my technical skills and ability to do little bitty things. And I don't know, it just worked out perfectly. And then I had a lot of free time for fishing and running around, diving, and that's how I came to the Keys. Right. I met a guy right as I moved here who finished University of Miami and came down to be a fishing guide. He pulled Stu Apt around for 6 months, and he became a very good friend, but he's the one that took me bonefishing the first time. I caught my first bonefish with him.
And who was that?
It's a guy named Bob Beach, who went on to do a bunch of different things. He became CEO of biotech companies and all, and he's retired now. But he still loves to fish. I mean, when he's visiting, he's like the dog. You say, you want to go get in the boat? You don't want to go in the boat? He's down there with the engine running, waiting for me to get the rest of the stuff going. He's very enthusiastic.
Yeah, you mentioned at 10 years of age you had that boat, and it's a form of freedom.
Absolutely. Nobody else had transportation like that. All the new river system, there's like 300 miles of inland waterways in Fort Lauderdale. Right. So we just ran around, and I wasn't allowed to go in the ocean, but of course we did.
Yeah, of course.
To go snorkeling and messing around.
Did you know Carl Hyacin as a kid in Fort
No,
Lauderdale?
I didn't. Well, there a little bit of age difference.
Okay.
About 5-6 years. He actually, I had an aunt and uncle that lived in Miami that bought the model houseboat for Surfside 6. It was a condo on Miami Beach where they had the demo on the river, which was a floating home made by Surfside 6 Floating Homes. Well, they bought it and then moved it to Flamingo. So they had it from Flamingo like 1950. Oh, no, it'd be after, I don't know if Donna wrecked it. Anyway, no, it was in the 60s when we go down there. So it wasn't Donna that got it. Anyway, we'd go to Flamingo at least one weekend a month and fish. My brother and I, we're like 14 years old. We'd smoke cigarettes and fish snook off the dock and catch ladyfish. And they just fished, my aunt and uncle fished live shrimp on a popping cork, and for snapper and trout and stuff like this. I remember hooking my first tarpon about 15 feet from the boat on that shrimp on a popping cork. That thing came out of the water. It was like, I want to do this again.
It's like a Polaris missile.
But they didn't want the tarpon. Oh, you don't bring the tarpon in the boat. They shit all over it. They were
right.
They were just old meat fishermen.
Well, Nicky had his younger life. We spent a lot of time in New River tarpon fishing, and I in Fort Lauderdale do a lot of beach stuff during, the mullet run. Did you ever fish the mullet run?
I never fished any of that. I was more of a diver. In fact, when I first moved here, I was solidly in the diving camp, and then my friend Bob Beach was the bonefish guy, so we started fishing. I bought a Mako 17 and put bait wells on it and a poling platform and took the bow rail off and pull that big heavy thing around, but I could also go diving in it.
Right.
It didn't do either one well, but it did both.
Sure.
You know,
Right.
Huff called it the shit barge, you know, because it was so heavy.
Yeah.
But of course, they were fishing a Sidewinder in those days, which was not a light boat either.
Right.
They didn't graduate into the Dolphin for a while.
When you first, you said that you, the first guide that you were fishing with, you know, and you caught your first bonefish. Was that like a lightning bolt in any way? Like, oh my God, the first tarpon you hooked, it really shocked you. But
the first bonefish was a tailing bonefish. So you had all that set up, you know, which I still am addicted to. I love fishing tailing bonefish. The fact that it takes you a while. You're not sitting there waiting for something to yank your string.
Sure.
You are hunting, finding, setting yourself up to make it happen. I love that long foreplay, you know.
Sure.
And then hooking them, and they take off through the water with a sound of paper tearing, you know. Like,
right. That's a great analogy. It is. Your line running through the one, and the tail spray.
Mind-blowing, yeah.
And that spray off your monofilament ripping.
And then they have a second run, and they're just gutsy for, you know, a little 18-inch fish puts up a heck of a struggle. So, I just got addicted to bonefish. And then permit were consequential, and I fished some tarpon. When I first started the practice, I think one of my first patients was Corky Adams' wife, Barbara. Now, Corky is Steve's father-in-law. Now, he's since died. But they fished the tournaments and all big time. They won the bait tournament, the invitational 3 times, I think. They were always in the thing. And so when I first met Barbara, I think it was almost tournament week, and she was talking about it, about them fishing, and I hadn't met Steve yet. Then Steve came in as a patient, and we agreed to trade dentistry for his wife, him, his kids. And I did that for a ton of guides.
Wow.
And it's
great because a lot of guides really didn't have very much money. A lot of them probably didn't have health insurance of any kind.
No, they were more than happy to do it. So
Sure.
I don't know. I'm curious about how many days I've traded for, maybe 500 or more. You know,
Wow.
I don't know. It gave me a lot of time.
So one appointment would be like 4 days on the water?
No. Well, the fees were a little less. They were only getting $300 a day back then, or $354. I don't know what it was. And I was getting about that for a crown. So it was almost 1-to-1 or something. I don't know. We sort of kept score, traded retail for retail.
Right.
And so the first time I went flats fishing, like really officially, was with Huff, which was pretty funny because I had fished, but I always with a spinning rod, never picked up a fly rod. And I cast sidearm. You know, I didn't make the equipment work. I could catch a fish. I could, fight it. But I was casting sidearm, and the Huff said, there's 4 things that happen when you cast sidearm, and 3 of them are bad.
Really?
If you cast straight overhead, it's either long or it's short. Only short's bad. Long, you can bring it back.
Slide it.
So I just...
Sidearm, it could go dead left.
Dead left, dead right. You know, so I had to retrain myself. But that's what I mean. I think I would have stayed a putz dicking around by myself or telling jokes and fooling around fishing. You know, I'm not that possessed with it. But when I started fishing with the guides, it seemed to mean a little more to them. And then particularly in the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
For years, I didn't want to fish the tournament. I thought, oh man, you take something that's fun and everything, I can turn it into a serious sport or something. But then once I did it with Mike Hewlett the first time. We did it for a couple of years, and he's a super, super nice guy. We had a lot of fun, traded a lot of days. He's just joke, you know. So I'm likely to be turning around telling a joke when the fish show up, though, is the problem. And then I fished with Harry, and then...
You saw the difference.
Well, Harry is all about it, you know, serious. So I learned a shitload. And you can make a casting error with Harry, like, oops, you know, okay, you get minor amount of shit. If you make a mental error, you didn't anticipate the way the fish was moving, what he was doing, what the wind was doing, the current was doing, that's terminal. Don't do that with Harry because
Interesting.
he will fillet you for making a mental error because he knows I'm smart, I can think, and he's taught me better, So
He was driven, and I think that for the tournaments and those guys, Harry, that I fished with as you did, he was my first really, probably, you learn from everybody, but Harry, for me, for those 7 years I fished with him before I ever fished a tournament, he was drilling me, and the process was so important in order to catch these fish because bonefish, they are so they demand perfection. There's like Huff calls them the real honest fish. You do it well, you're going to get them. Was Huff the same way when you fished with Steve?
Well, he was. Yeah, he wasn't as serious. Not because I never fished a tournament with him.
Okay, so that might have been the difference, right? Yeah. There.
Well, Harry in the tournament. Yeah, that was serious. That was because there were times when he'd get so jacked up and yelling at me, and I'd like, Harry, we don't have to do this. We can go do something else. I'm not willing to jeopardize our relationship over something.
So what would he say to
this.
you? What kind of mistake would you make?
Well, that was in the days before he got a little more temperate, I know that on his podcast, I was very, very pleased to watch him and him being humble and calm and all. That wasn't Harry before.
Age happens to do that to you, It's a process.
He's been a very, very close friend, and I went through all of his iterations, perhaps, of being wild and crazy, and I've done some crazy shit in Key West we won't talk about. And
we'll talk about it. We're not going to talk about it
later. We'll get to that here in a little bit.
And then when he found a spiritual connection, and he went through a lot of that, and some people were offended by him talking to you about it. But I never thought of it that way. I thought Harry loves me, and he just wants to share what he has. So
sure.
It never bothered me. But he'd yell, "Oh, Fred, I pulled my fucking ass off all the way over here for you to blow the cast." That kind of excoriation.
Yeah.
Which
it's like, oh, so you don't think I tried hard myself? Did I mean to break that fish off?
I had to check my effort. Did I really try, or was I farting around? You know?
But that's an honest question to ask.
But he
yourself.
was so serious. I said, Harry, I have to pee. I'm going to pee. He said, not right now. There's fish somewhere. I said, Harry, I assure you, I can cast with my dick out. And he said, a good angler can cast without interrupting his stream.
That is so.
That's really.
That is so good. And that is so Harry.
So
my God.
How many years did you fish with Harry in the tournaments before you won?
I fished the first time. We wound up second by Dickie Moeller catching a fish at like 325.
And this is the all tackle?
Yeah. Where there weren't many people fishing fly in that at all, mostly because there's big ass fish. You had to catch a lot of big fish
to win.
You had 5 weight slots, but you couldn't waste them on 8 and 9 pound fish. I remember early in the week you'd turn a 10-pound fish loose to hopefully catch a 12 or a 13, or fill your slots with a bigger fish.
That was a release fish. 10-pound fish was a release fish.
Well, you had to be 8, but you released it and took those points. But you tell people in the Bahamas that you meet at a club or something, I'd catch 8 or 10 fish over 10 pounds in a week, we're out in 5 days of fishing. They think you're lying because they don't see those fish in the Bahamas, but in Isla Morada, you sure did.
Right. What was the bait of choice? Was it a shrimp or a cracked crab?
Well, it started with shrimp, big live shrimp. But then you see the damn fish. I don't know what happened. I still haven't sorted this out in my head. 2 of them would come tailing down the flats, and your shrimp is laying there. They sniff it. They go over to it. And these are happy fish that have been tailing down the flat. They don't know you're there. You've got that cast out 20 feet in front of them. They come up to it, and they turn and move with purpose off the flat.
Offended. They were offended.
So it's like, okay, what got them? Was it metal of the hook? Was it the bumped into the line? Did they just see a big shrimp go, last time I ate one here, it didn't work out well?
Right.
I don't know. So then we started using crabs. But with a crab, like a permit, you'd hook it through the carapace, and then just before you cast it, you crunched it.
Right.
So it would smell. But they treat a crab differently. When a bonefish comes up to a crab, they pick it up and they munch it and start hucking out the shells. So you're waiting for it to come tight. You're not wanting to bump it. You're not wanting to do anything. You're sort of tight. And then the fish swims away and you go, and you reel it back and you have the carapace. So they sat there and hooked it. They had it in their mouth, but you didn't hook them. So then that was like, oh, how many of these can we do? You know, what's the deal?
What did you find out the difference? Did you ever be able to catch those fish unless they turned and swam off with the crab?
Yeah, they didn't do that every time.
Yeah.
But it did happen enough to where that was frustrating. You went through all it took to get that bait in their mouth, and then you didn't hook them.
Right.
Now, with a shrimp, when a bonefish eats a shrimp, they swim away with it.
Right.
Because they just, they don't have to crush it very much.
I would think that cracked crab has more scent coming out of the body of the...
It does, but it does not take much for a bonefish. When you throw a shrimp out there, and if the current's moving, you just watch this fish down current from them.
It's like a shark.
I know.
They're like a bonnet head.
It's unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know how many. I mean, you've seen dogs that do 1 part per jillion, and they're like, "How did that happen?" It's hard to imagine how sensitive they are to stuff like that, But so we did a lot of that. I didn't pick up the fly rod for a long, long time.
Who introduced you to the fly?
Oh, oddly enough, God, I can't think of his name right now. He lived on Sugarloaf. He was the vice president of research of 3M Company, which is why 3M made Flyline.
Mm-hmm.
His name was
because of him,
Chuck Walton.
Okay.
And he lived on Big Pine. He was patient, and he talked to me about fly fish. And I said, yeah. So he had me down to his house a couple times, casting in his yard. And then a friend gave me a Shakespeare noodle, a fiberglass one that's terrible. And so that was a disincentive because I don't know. And then I did it a little bit. I do it with the guides and I get frustrated and put it down, pick up the bait. And then I just kept at it and getting better and better to where I could make it work. And there was one tournament. You interviewed Pepe.
Sure.
Pepe Lopez. I loved tormenting him in that tournament because he's so he's so excitable and so
he wound up.
Oh yeah, just so hilarious. And one day on the last day, we were just very close, like maybe a fish or two away. I think he was in the lead by a little bit, but both of us, Pepe and me, and he was fishing with Billy Knowles. I was with Harry. I was with Mike Guerin. Had filled all our weight slots. So all we had was Friday was just go catch as many release fish as you can. And we came to the dock and Pepe was there. We came late and Pepe said, how many did you catch? And I said 6. He said, all right, I caught 8. And I said 3 of them were on fly, which is 300 points of fish rather than 100 points of fish. So I beat him with the fly rod.
Oh, my God.
And so Mike was vindicated because he always wanted me to use the fly rod, but Mike never fished bait before. I think I was the first person to fish bait
You
with
taught
him.
him how to fish bait.
Well, the first day we warm up for the tournament, we leave Lorelei and go right out to the strip bank running right there, kind of. And there's two big-ass fish coming down the flat. And I got 2 rods, and I cast out about 20 feet in front of him. Mike goes, oh, that was a good cast. And then I take the other one and put it out further than that one and sit there with both rods. And I'm waiting, and the fish come down, and they miss this one, get past it. So I reel it up, keep the other one there. They find the other one. I hook one up, and takes off. Mike goes, I think I get how this works. You use the smell.
Yeah. It's the scent. You fish the scent.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So then he adapted pretty quickly because he's a very, very fishy guy. And
right.
we had a great time fishing tournaments because he's the right mix. For one thing, he never chastises you about screwing something up. And it's always next fish. That's done. Go. We can't do anything about that. I've blown a fish at 3:25, lines out of the water at 3:30. He jumps back up in the tower. Let's go find another.
You
No
got 5
quitting.
minutes left.
No quitting. No.
You call him a rat terrier?
He is. He is.
He'll be.
He's
Yeah,
a vicious
he's-
competitor.
You know what? And his brother's
but a gracious one, too.
Sure. His brother's the same way.
The one tournament, that thing with the fly with Pepe was we had waited most of the day. We caught a couple fish, some on fly. We waited for the Key West flat, that one west of Marathon, for the water to pour out and get right because we knew we were going to go there and it was going to be great. We show up there about 2:30. Mind you, we got to run all the way back to Islamorada when we're done and be home back by 5. But there were no fish on the flat. I was like, oh, God, what? What do you do now? We've waited. And Mike jumps down, starts the boat up. He said, what are we doing? He said, we're going to the other end of the bridge and we're going to win this thing. And we drove to the other end of the 7 Mile Bridge down to Sunshine Key, down that area. And I caught 3 fish in 30 minutes.
At the buzzer.
And then came home to, find, we beat Pepe by a smidge, But it was because Mike, being the competitor he is and didn't go in the shitter and didn't give up,
Were there 12, 13, 14 pounders west of Big Pine back in the day?
There were big fish caught in contents. I haven't caught one bigger than 12 pounds in the lower keys. I've caught two 13-pounders in Marathon on Jack Tar Flat, and then a crap load of them around Islamorada and Peterson's, the Arsenickers, all that.
Right.
Yeah, I've seen some fish. They were like, holy crap! I just like to know. Mike and I were in a practice day, and we were fishing Twin Key Bank going towards Panhandle. 3 fish came down the flat, and I said, look at the size of those 2. There was a little one in the front. And we're like, and then it's like, man, those were like 13. And then that one in the front's like 9 pounds or something. Damn. And so we're trying to work into an angle, and the 9-pounder swims at the boat. He's out in front of them by 20 yards, maybe 15 yards. Swims at the boat. And so I put a bait on him. He ate it. Luckily, he ran around this way and off the flat. The other 2, I'm looking over my shoulder. They're still tailing happily. I'm like, oh, God. So we're trying to get it in. And Mike says, get that damn thing in here. And I said, the weather's changed. This isn't the hot summer water. This is fall water. It's cooler. They got more stamina.
Right.
And we get it up to the boat and we go, that's a big fish. We put it in the well and go to look for the other 2, and they're gone. This one weighed 12.4.
Wow.
And we only thought it was a 9-pounder because of the relativity of these monsters. And now, what size were those 2 guys?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We'll never know. There was no way this guy was going to come right to the boat and blow off it. So we were stuck.
The only reason why I asked about west of Big Pine is because every time we mention bonefish tournaments or big bonefish, everyone talks about Shell Key, Billy's Lake, like right downtown Islamorada. So when you're in these tournaments, are there just boats all throughout the flats in the Islamorada, and you might have to go to 3 or 4 different spots before you get your spot?
Well, be lines in the water at 7:30. Some guys would go out in the dark and wait. So you'd get there, you'd sit, and you'd hear somebody like not too far away. Then the light would come up, and you'd see somebody not far away. But there was, it's the Shell Key, and then the whole bank running up towards Crab Key. I mean, not Crab Key. That's before that. Cotton Key. All that stuff around the bridge inside of Snake Creek, and there's a lot of territory there. Snickers, Peterson's.
There's more territory than I think, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, Barnes, and then it depended on the tide.
Right.
I always hated fishing near the road. I didn't like the road noise. I'm out there for quiet.
Mm-hmm. Did it mess with your head and your performance?
What? The road noise?
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
Obnoxious.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it was motorcycles or don't fish during motorcycle week, you know.
So if you really wanted a spot, you can get out there 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Well, nobody did that.
Right,
I
but-
think you couldn't leave. They were trying to discourage too much. Well, they had various iterations. You know, you're always discussing rule stuff because of, you know, trying to figure out how to do it as safely and better as possible.
Right.
But nobody left that early. I don't think you could leave before 5:30. But
we
there
had-
wasn't any advantage to running way down here, the big fish, and you need to catch 5 big fish
Right.
in that week. So your best chance was somewhere around Islamorada.
When Hoover and I were fishing the bonefish tournaments, we had lines in at 7. Is
Yeah.
that when you had lines in and lines out at 3?
Right.
Is that what you had in the
It
tackles?
seemed to me it was 7:30 most of the time.
Yeah. So we would get out. We'd be on the flat like at 6. It's dark, and we'd stake out on Shell Key on an edge somewhere out there. And I just lay down on the bow and look at the stars. You know, feel the sea breeze, and
That's perfect.
it was so good. It was just so good. You know, and the anticipation. You know that it's going to be a beautiful day because you're seeing stars as far as you can see.
Yeah.
And there's a light breeze,
The
and you know what you're
anticipation.
going to see as soon as that light, you know, starts to crack. And it was always good. And you could see fish tailing.
Yeah.
And you had to wait. You're looking at your
Oh, yeah.
your clock, right? You go, okay, I can't pull over there yet, but you're just like this bird dog ready to go chase that stick.
There was one time Harry and I had, we went over by Cotton Key. There's a wheel ditch there, and we staked up. And it's about 30 minutes before the light's up a little bit, and there's 30 minutes, and there's 2 big fish tailing down there on the edge of the flat. And I'm like, you know, I got to read the paper or something. I don't know.
You're not reading anything. You're just
I don't
looking.
know. I'm just too nervous. And then Harry he had the live well that we would keep the weight fish in, had his shrimp in it because he'd had them on a bubbler all night. So he pours it in his bait well. Well, that smelly water went out the bottom of his bait well and was in the tide and went down. And those 2 fish sniffed it and went and came down to us. It's like, oh, no.
Too soon.
They blew off the boat.
Came right to the
Nice move,
transom.
Harry.
So then we sat there another 5 minutes, and another fish popped up. And it's about 5 minutes before line's in, and a freaking boat runs the ditch, and who is some doodah, not in the tournament, blows that fish out of there. So then we were just totally shut that wad. Our morning, you know, you want to be looking at a fish
Sure.
right at 7:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's did you become crazy about the passion to win these events? Did
No.
it get under your skin
Never
at
did.
all?
Never did.
You're just
Well, I am you know, I'm pretty good about not being attached to outcome. I'm pretty good about the process is what it is. If you can't get joy in every minute, I did that in the office. I think in dentistry, I looked at what was important to me was the quality of experience for my patient, for me, and the team. I didn't worry about making a shitload of money. I didn't worry about anything other than the outcomes that I was putting out the very best we could for that person in terms of the experience they had there and the quality of the product that I turned out. And that was what was rewarding to me. And the same thing in the tournament. It's your effort and your attention to what's going on
the
out
details.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and then Harry was the detail man. I
Right.
mean, I learned so much about what the fish is doing and what's happening and all that was revelatory.
For sure. I remember one of the most important tips that Harry ever gave me. So if you got some fish that are mudding and your fly might be a little bit too far out of the line of the fish that are sliding, most people strip that fly into position, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're tarpon fishing or the fish coming down, the pike, your fly's a little bit long and you strip it back into position, wait for the fish to intercept. He said, never strip the fly into position. Sweep your rod. And I remember...
Now, why is that? I've heard you
Because-
say that recently, and
big fish don't like things jumping. And I remember
that's like
they don't like the fly to jump. Like when we were fishing for the big tailing bonefish on Shell Key, we always use crab flies. And because the shrimp fly, you'd always tap it like this. They don't like that. We'd put the fly in there and the fish is coming, maybe tailing put the fly in. He picks his head up, and I'd tap that fly, and he'd blow up. So we started using crab flies, and you just slide it. That's what we did. Tarpon don't like that fly jumping to get into position. You know, how you start stripping real fast to get in position. But if you sweep that fly, it's soft.
Well, nowadays it's the rod under the arm and the
two-hand strip.
Yeah,
it's a different game now.
Steady, don't move, don't let it change speed.
But the problem with moving your rod tip for tarpon is sometimes you'll move your rod tip to get in position, then they'll eat, and your rod tip's all the way back here.
Yeah, that's
and you're
why
fucked.
I was told do not.
Yeah.
Well,
so that's
I'm
tricky.
talking about a situation where the fish are like still 15 feet away from your fly. Maybe 10 feet back there, so you can slide it a little bit, and then you can start the feeding process.
Or then you can catch
up
on your slack.
Yeah. So you just slide it and then move that rod forward and pick up your slack. And then you can start the feed. But I remember the first time Harry ever spoke about mudding fish, and then we saw some fish there. And meanwhile, this is well before I ever started tournament fishing. I made this cast, and he said, and I stripped it into position, and the fish just blew up. And that's when he taught me about the sweeping of a fly. And that's why we never fished shrimp flies, to big bonefish.
Right.
It was always the crab.
The crab fly.
Yeah. And the water depths, what kind of weight to get it down. So as you mentioned in your dentistry, it's all about the details. And success is all in, how well you perform the small steps. Well, what about working barefooted? Is that part of the process?
Well,
everybody says you were the barefooted dentist, and your whole staff was barefooted.
I built the building I started practicing in 77. It was done by July or August, and that's when I started, August 77. We lived upstairs. So the first patients I had were friends, really. And I was barefoot all the time on the property, so and I remember my wife, who was working for me, she said, she'd come and say, this one looks a little stuffy. Maybe you ought to put some, but I wore flip-flops under the shoes. So it really wasn't.
It's all good.
Big.
The outcome was still great.
So then I just started never putting on shoes. I lived upstairs for 17 years,
And were your employees copying you?
Some did, some didn't. Some weren't comfortable not wearing shoes. Others did. And
that's awesome.
It was optional. And, people, same thing. People want to take their shoes off, fine.
That's cool.
It was always very informal. I remember the bank president taking his tie off in the car before he came in, and I'd rarely see people dressed really nice, maybe a bank employee or something, but for the most part, and that was the one cool thing. You could not tell how much money somebody had, because some of the richest people I had were wearing kind of ripped up shorts and sneakers with Velcro on them, like from Kmart. They were not.
Yeah. I think that might have been the whole Lower Keys, Key West vibe, right?
It is, really. Key West has gotten kind of fancier because a lot of northers have moved down and haven't totally embraced the...
Right.
But Key West has always been so egalitarian. You'd go to, we were talking about this the other night, you go to cocktail parties and there'll be a Pulitzer Prize winner and then the gardener. It was just the only quality you had to have was you had to be interesting.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
It wasn't about money. It wasn't about status. It wasn't anything. Just,
Let's get back to the fishing briefly, because I want to still go with Key West and your life, in the Lower Keys. Let's talk about the tarpon thing a little bit. Once you started throwing the fly, did you chase tarpon with the fly rod?
Yeah,
very
much more. It's more suitable than anything else. I mean, I did catch tarpon on bait, but once I started with the fly, there was no going back on tarpon.
I remember Pepe, we were fishing in an area right out here in front, and there's traditionally you slide down this edge, and you never cut anybody off that's sliding down the edge. And you have a couple of creeks. And I remember Pepe, he would come out of, Tarpon Creek and run over there and just cut everybody off and shut his motor off, and he'd throw crabs with his spinning rod at all these tarpon. And it's a fly fishing, area. And he could care less. He would just rip on everybody if you ever, spoke to him about that. But I can imagine that was probably pretty cool with a spinning rod, flipping crabs at these tarpon.
Yeah, I did some of that in the earlier days when I didn't know how to use a fly rod. I did it with my Kuehl at a bunch, we fished, caught a bunch of tarpon right in here on crabs, just coming down the flat. You just fish them like a permit. Kind of.
Right.
I caught a shitload of permit. I caught 8 permit one day with Harry on bait. Never lost sight of the pier house.
Wow.
Just 2 of them were over 30 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
You know, that's Harry though. Just
he was really a genius.
So freaking good
down here.
There was permit around, and I was throwing strikes. So
yeah. You mentioned tailing bonefish, the scenario of moving the boat, watching the current, and the fish goes in all different directions. It's really hard to get really a nice close shot.
Especially on a fly.
With a fly, because you put it in there and all of a sudden he's going this way. It's hard to get your fly out to make that cast.
Yeah, tailing fish on a fly is just so hard because you got to put it right on them, and you know how dicey
if it's
that
blowing
is.
A little bit.
Yeah, the bait made it so much easier, particularly those big fish. I lived, I was on Big Pine, excuse me, and had the boat on a canal down on Coupon Bight near Sea Camp that belonged to some friends. And so I bet you I fished that finger flat in the one that's towards the entrance, not up in there. I know I was there 3 nights a week for 15 years or more. And there was always tailing fish on it.
Wow.
Always. You had to go maybe up a little towards the back of Cook's Island, where there was a lot of mangrove shoots. We called it the rice paddy because it was so full of mangrove shoots. But that's where I really spent more and more time and watched fish and learned more on my own than any time.
Mm-hmm.
And then had a lot of guide days with Harry, Dale, Perez. I fished a bunch with Jose, became very close friends with Jose, Steve a lot, and a whole bunch of other. Marshall Cutchin I loved. He was one of the smartest people around. You know, I don't know if you ever fished with Marshall.
I never have.
Or talked with him.
No, I would love to have him on the podcast because of his life.
He's out west right now, right?
Yeah. We started that whole online magazine stuff. Yeah, and it's done very well with that.
Yeah.
But he was in I don't know how many years he was in Key West, maybe 15 and all. But he had been in the publishing world, in the literary world, so well steeped in philosophy and everything. So he could bury me talking. It was great.
It's fun
and very, very fishy.
Yeah,
very fishy.
You could really have a steep learning curve during those years that you and I were fishing down here. You were down here a little bit before I was, but because there were so many fish around, because you can make a mistake and get another shot in a short period of time after that. Are those fish still there that you used to look at?
No, I think the finger flat, the times when I've gone there, I live on Sugarloaf now, and I sometimes run up there and look at it. I never did figure out how to fish that strip bank in the one with the cuts through it.
Sure.
You fish tarpon all the time, but Paige Brown used to tell me that there were bonefish on that flat a lot of the time, but I never saw one.
Right.
And I tried, and I've tried around. I found them inside that long strip bank coming this way. There's bonefish there. I've caught a bunch there. But
McGuane used to make laps in there, and he would say he could catch all 3 species bones, permit, in tarpon.
Yeah, probably could. I mean, it's
unfortunately. Do you still fish alone?
Taper off. Yeah, some. I like wading a lot, and the Bahamas is just such great.
Well, there you go. I mean,
great
right?
wading.
Let's talk about Jimmy a little bit. He just passed. You're good friends with Jimmy.
Yeah.
You used to go over there and fish the Bahamas. I think
he took a group of us over there. It started with Carl and me. He took us over there. He was down in Crooked with the big boat, which is a Choi Lee at that time. It was a piece of crap boat. And he asked Carl and I to go fishing. So we met. I knew Carl from the tournament, but not well. So we met in Palm Beach and got on this, it looked like a 727 to me. It was an F-28 or something with 2 pilots and a stewardess, and Carl and me. And Carl has to get so loaded up with Xanax before he can fly. So.
Really? Was that Jimmy's plane?
Yeah. And we were flying to Georgetown, where Jimmy was going to fly over on the seaplane and meet us. So
God, I love options like that.
Yeah. So Carl and I are up running from side to side of the plane, looking out at the Bahamas, you know, just
Right.
like, oh man, this is like the craziest thing. And we got there and Jimmy flew in and the weather was really iffy, crappy. And he said, let's go to the Four Seasons and have lunch. And this is 20 something years ago or something. I thought the Four Seasons was like a code name for their dive bar in Georgetown. But we go there and it's a Four Seasons. I'm like a rube from the country, like, golly. And then it was the weather's going to suck. So we went over, we took the little plane and flew to Rum, and the big boat came over and met us. And we fished there, but up in the salt ponds inside of Rum and this and that, I think I was the only one that caught a fish. It was not that great.
Mm-hmm.
And also that was like trip one. And then we just started doing it and added more people in. And then the group got so big, you had to do it in 2 groups. And then he quit that and just rented the Bonefish Club, or we did it in Cat Cay where his house was, which, you know, but it was a great bunch of guys. It was Guy Valdine, for one, who I became very, very close to, and who was just an extraordinary person. And then a bunch of his fishing buddies and people from across the spectrum, a couple artists, you know, John Alexander and Dan Rizzi, that are great artists. Charlie Hergruder's a plastic surgeon in Boston who did all the boobs of the Boston Red Sox wives, you know, that kind of thing. But just a whole collection of great people. Jimbo Matter, who I've told you about, is just the quintessential waterman from Mobile. Jimmy's known him for forever.
Wasn't he in the movie Forrest Gump?
Well, he was the diction model for Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
With his lower Alabama accent, you know, just him telling stories. You're laughing 5 words into the story because it's about a syphilitic dog with 3 legs, which, you know, you just go, where does that come from? And then Corbett Davis is a jeweler in Pensacola that Jimmy made friends with, and they became the biggest collector of conch pearls in the world, probably.
Wow.
Buying them from all over. Yeah, this is a Corbett piece. This is a horse conch pearl.
Oh, wow.
Which you can believe how rare a freaking horse conch pearl is.
Wow.
Was McGuane down there?
The what?
Was McGuane down there at the time?
No, even though McGuane's his brother-in-law, he never did invite him. And then a guy named Howell Raines was the former editor of the New York Times. He was a friend of Jimmy's. So the interesting conversations around the dinner table were the political. I mean, people like Howell. Jimmy was very interested in it, had a lot of friends in the political world, Carl. So that was all resource deep. Mm-hmm. And then, but it could quickly go in the gutter.
Mm-hmm.
Because this was
well, Margaritaville was right next, probably in his right hand, you know, after a certain hour in the evening. But I think that's what makes it really enticing and invigorating and vibrant, is that you have a lot of smart people that love to fish and also have a cocktail later on too.
Well, that was Jimmy's and my connection, was the Bonefish thing. I didn't know him in Key West over the years, really, peripherally, but my wife at the time was an architect, and he had hired her in about 1985 to do his house on Riviera. And they met, and she said, "Oh, my husband likes the Bonefish." So she hooked us up, and that was kind of it. We just went fishing all the time, and whenever he was around, and just became friends.
Mm-hmm. Hyacinth told me that you were all together over there, and we're going to talk about Burning Man here in a little bit, because I know that you like to go into the desert. But he was telling me that you guys were over there, I think, doing a celebration of life of a guy by the name, I think is Jeff or something.
Joe Pantorno.
Joe, yeah. And you built a little floating Burning Man, right?
That wasn't floating.
Tell me the story about that.
I first went to Burning Man the year I turned 60. And it was kind of, I just had gotten, or started getting divorced, I guess. And so it was this rejuvenation, or, you know, reimagining my life, because I had kids, and I always wanted to go to Burning Man. And she said, you're not going to the desert to get naked and do drugs. I said, you sound like that's a bad thing, you know? and so as soon as I started divorce, I went to Burning Man, and because I had friends that did it repeatedly. And then I came back and was pretty high about it. And I just had started dating Rita then. And then we had a big birthday party for my 60th birthday party. And we built a man and burned it. And so that started this burning a man thing for marking various things. I did it for the wedding. I did it once at New Year's, but more birthdays, you know. And we just did one for my 75th, and it just blew up more ordnance than you can believe. And we've had some funny stories with it. But that's how that started. So anyway, when Joe died, I built one out of plywood. It was small. It was only this big. And then packed some fireworks and stuff in my bag and put it in the plane and take it over there. And I pounded some rebar, got it from them, and then mounted it up. And then it had a spiral thing that was supposed to shoot a bunch of rockets. Well, when I lit the thing, it burned for a little bit, started shooting stuff. And then that entire center thing blew up, like blew shit everywhere. Everybody was diving under the furniture. And then the one main piece was in the water and had a flame coming off of it. It started floating in with the tide. And Jimmy sang 2 songs. And just as he finished the second song, the flame went out.
Oh, how
so
perfect.
It's just this, I don't know, unbelievable thing. Because Joe went out with a bang. He had a heart attack watching TV in his house by himself in Delray Beach. Had a heart attack and died.
Wow.
Know? And so his man went out with a bang too.
So Nikki, if I pass in the near future, we call Fred for me?
Yeah, we call Fred and we'll burn something.
So why was Burning Man so transformative in your life?
There are 10 principles of Burning Man. And some of them, all of them are the way, if the world worked this way, if people paid attention to those things, the world would be a much better place. They call it radical inclusion. There's no discrimination. Everybody's welcome. Now there's limited tickets, so that does it. There's leave no trace. There is not one garbage can on this entire property with 70,000 people, and there's not one speck of litter, because everybody is responsible. If you see something, they call it MOOP, matter out of place. If you see a piece and you're going to reach it, there's 2 other people moving for it, kind of thing.
Wow.
Everybody takes care of everybody. There's no commerce. There's no commercialization. Everything is gifted. Everybody comes there and they put up these theme camps with a bar, and it's free drinks all the time, or there's people making pancakes 24 hours a day, or grilled cheese sandwiches or something. And it's, everything is meant to, and you're supposed to be, there's no spectators, they say. You're supposed to be part of the entertainment, which means dress stupid or do something or perform or whatever. You know, and there's people from all over the world. It's just so freaking interesting.
I think a lot of the really big entrepreneurs like Jeff Bezos and I think Elon Musk, these guys have been there. And I understand that, you know, when you get to a certain frame of mind, you know, through various, you know, drugs or whatever it might be, they see life at a completely different level, and their brain opens, and then that, you know, through that experience.
Yeah, it's not all that drug oriented, surprisingly. You think it would be, and there's alcohol everywhere, but you never see anybody drunk.
Right.
You don't see any aggressive bad behavior. It's, I don't know. It's
could you call it like a sophisticated hippie commune?
No,
if you will.
No, it's really smart humor though.
Right.
Really smart humor. There's funny stuff. It's not, you know, I started going to Fantasy Fest from the very first year. Mm-hmm. And Fantasy Fest has turned into one big base humor, one big dick joke, I'd say. You know, it's just, it's not, there's very few pieces of smartness and creativity. There's some, but not like Burning Man is like over the top. The things that people make, the sculptures, you can't believe the effort that people go through.
Right. Do you wear goggles?
To make these things. Well, you carry goggles because if a dust storm starts, you pretty much want to have protection and the
Well,
ability to
Carl told me to
hunker
make
down.
sure to tell you not to show up in a pair of Speedos and goggles, right? So you got a photograph of you with about an inch of dust, pasted onto your being. That's all you have on, Speedos and goggles.
Okay. Well, the Speedo thing was, growing up here and everything, that's all we wore for diving. And you just lived in your Speedo all day long, kind of. You might put cut off shorts over it to go somewhere, but you lived in that. Well, then I started going to with Jimmy and Carl, and no Speedos, Fred, no Speedos. I couldn't come back if I wore a Speedo, so I had to go out and buy board shorts or something because they were.
You got caught in a dust storm?
No, that was in Bahamas. They didn't want me wearing Speedos there, even though I would.
But I think Carl told me that he saw a photograph of you from Burning Man.
Yeah, but no, it was I don't know which one that was. I don't know. There was one that I have with my son and I standing with a naked girl, because we were working as greeters at the gate, which just helps orient people. And it was really dusty and crazy. And this woman shows up naked, with a scarf and whatever, goggles, and she said, "Oh, isn't this Naked Greeter Day?" I said, "No, that was yesterday." She said, "Oh, I'll just hang with you guys."
Perfect. Did these sculptures that you make from Roadkill, is that an extension of the Burning Man experience?
Not so much. I've always collected animal parts, and I had so many of them. And then I had the mother of the boys was into angels, and so I started making things that had a body, had wings, and using a bird skull or something, and it went on the wall. And people liked them, and I'd make more and give them away. And then ultimately I put one in an art show and at Studios of Key West, and it sold. And Corbett saw it and wanted one. Carl wanted one, and I'm like, okay, I made them for friends, So they grew out of that.
Yeah.
Walk us through what you have here.
Well, this is a cat skull from a Roadkill. This is actually a wildebeest lower jaw I brought back from Africa from 1987. I just had it in my stuff.
He just had a wildebeest skull in his stuff.
Well, I just had a hunk of it, And then this is the one that the
horseshoe.
Yeah, the horseshoe crab. Whatever. They're all over the place. These are shoulder bones out of a turtle. Snapping turtle from Georgia, of course. These are pecten shells from here. These are turkey wings from Maine. And these four things are raccoon penises. There's a bone in some mammal species.
What that's called.
The os, O-S.
Is that what it is?
The os, yes.
And so the name of this piece?
Well, I put little epaulets on the shoulder out of... this is made out of a measles cowrie, and then I put these things that look like metals. So this is sort of a military thing. I call him Major Dickhead.
That is so good. That is so excellent.
Yeah. So, and Carl has one with a raccoon penis on it too. And it's funny when he does some things on NPR or something. He'll be on Zoom and he'll have that thing in the background on the table. He makes sure it's
alive and well
located.
So you're in galleries. So if people want to purchase one, they can find them. Yeah,
I've had a couple shows. Rita and I did a group show with my first wife and her husband. So it was pretty fun. Mm-hmm. 3 Troxels and a Nabla with different things. That was a great show. I did one in Pensacola with Rita. No, I didn't do it. I didn't do it really going that way. I just had fun. I like the creativity and messing with stuff, and it's just one of those
turned out great
things that I do, and I don't know.
But
I don't know if I'll keep doing it.
For the most part, everything's revolved around stuff you find on the side of the road.
Yeah, either on the shore, like or people send me stuff. This was sent by a friend in Maine. Or a lot of some old auto body parts, like a chunk of really rusted painted metal that I found in Sugarloaf. There's some cars out in the woods on the old state road that goes way back down, and they're just stuff. Or copper roof off a roof somewhere of an old abandoned thing.
How much do you enjoy making sculptures like this?
I just like putting stuff together, and the beauty of, I'm kind of have an add and subtract brain kind of thing. I'm not sure I'd be good as a painter or something. I'm good at derivative art and three-dimensional things, so I'll put it together and look at it and go, that head doesn't go on that body, and and put another one on it. Luckily I have piles of bird skulls. I finally found, I was looking for a frigate bird. I always wanted a frigate bird.
Right.
Couldn't find them. Finally, I'm going somewhere. I don't remember who I was with. I think Doug Kilpatrick. And I went, frigate bird, pull over. So we go back, and dead bird in the water. I throw it in the back well, and take it home. And I have it almost processed. The skull is down in some bleachy water, getting the last meat off the back of the head. And the dog took it and chewed it up.
Oh, no.
I was going to ask about that. So you don't use beetles?
No, I haven't gotten it. I got a bunch of heads in the freezer right now that I really need to make an effort and do the domestic beetles and do that. But
Got a bunch of heads in the freezer.
Oh, you do? Ready for the domestic beetles? Yeah, yeah. I've got a CD on how to do it, how you buy, where you buy them,
Really?
all that stuff. Yeah, I've got the whole litany of how to do the domestic beetles. I just hadn't done it.
Right. How much does it smell?
I guess, it depends on how much meat you leave on there and how much fresh it is. If it's all, as it gets kind of dry, they're better to find them where they're roadkill that crawled off and something already worked it over and stripped it pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
That's better. It's because then all you need is a little bleach and a brush to get stuff off.
You're in the taxidermy business.
Nah, I wouldn't like that at all. I don't know. This is just a crazy diversion. I don't know.
So in your retirement, where are you spending most of your time?
Well, I'm getting loaded up to go to the Bahamas for 2 months.
Wow.
In the boat. I have a 32-foot power catamaran I designed and had built. It's got a 12-foot beam. It's got two 250 Suzukis on it. And I'm going to go all the way to Georgetown and work out of there, go over to Cat Island for a while, go to Conception. It only draws 18 inches.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
With the engine's up, so I can.
So you're going over
put
there
it in anything.
to do a lot of bone fishing as well.
Mostly wade, bone fishing, and then one of my friends is coming, who's a big deep water fish, loves marlin and stuff. So it's May, June. There's marlin. There's big ass wahoo. There's
right.
That's interesting. I went with him down to Panama to Tropic Star last year, which the first time I'd ever fished marlin intentionally. I've hooked 2 of them out here, but I just wanted to watch those big beasts and see what that's about. And man, are they predators.
Yeah.
Holy crap. They are serious fish.
I have, if you don't mind, Nikki, I have something here that I think you might be interested in hearing. We're talking about, fish themselves, and all fish have personalities. We're talking about bonefish and permit and tarpon.
Yeah.
And they all are so distinctively different. Even the softness of their personalities. And I was talking to Tom Evans the other day, and he was obviously one of the great tarpon fishermen of all time.
Yeah, one of the great bill fishermen too.
And that being said, I said, Tom, if you don't mind, talk to me. Tell me about, what you see in the personalities of these billfish. And if you don't mind, I want to play this.
Put the butt end right up to the microphone. Nope.
What? Hang on. How do I get that volume up?
You want to give me the phone?
Yep.
I'm going to show you.
Because for all those years, each fish is so different. And like we're fishing for bonefish differently than crabs and shrimp.
Okay, so this is the personality of the 3 marlins. And I would suspect maybe Dean might have a different view. but I'll start with the black marlin first, since he's the baddest of all these creatures in many respects. He totally, completely is not a fly rod fish. First of all, he's a reef fish. He ambushes. He's black. He's called black because he is black. He's not easy to see. He sneaks up behind the baits. He looks at them. He's very clever. He says, I'll go eat this one, then I'll kill this one, then I'll kill that one, and then I'll go and clean the whole package up. So he doesn't come in like a blue marlin or any of the other ones. So he's a thinking sort of a cocksucker. And on top of that, he teases terribly, because once he decides to make a commitment, he slams the thing so goddamn hard it scares him and he leaves. He's clever. The other thing, if you can get him on a fly, because he knows he's the baddest animal in the world, he's not scared of the boat or anything, and he generally makes a big run, and then he just goes and he sort of wallows. And when they have that wallow sort of a chance, you got a chance that you could stick a spike in him. But it's only a very quick opportunity. But he first of all, he's impossible to get hooked on a fly, just about. And then he gives you that opportunity that the other two marlins don't. Now, the blue marlin, he's just a badass. He's a psycho. He comes in, he's totally just, he needs to be in the insane asylum. And he just smashes everything. And he teases generally really well, because he's so committed and knows. So you can, but then you get him on the string, and he doesn't want to get caught at all, especially if you got different thermoclines and everything. Like in the South Pacific, you go down 500 feet. That's an awful lot of line and slack to try to come up tight against the fish before you put any real pressure on him even. So you've got all that water pressure on the backing and everything. So that's a problem. It's not a problem in Costa Rica because the thermocline's at 200 feet. So those fish tend to spend more time on the surface. It doesn't mean that they're easier, really. It's just, well, I do think they're easier, the blue marlin in the Pacific. And it's also the case of the blue marlin in the Atlantic. I think that thermocline's not as deep either. So if you want to catch a blue marlin, you don't want to go to the South Pacific. That's the first step. Then the striped marlin, well, he's a scaredy cat marlin. He pack hunts like wolves in a pack. He grew up small, and he has a small person's marlin attitude. So he's not a psycho. He's not an ambusher or any of that stuff. He teases really well. He teases even better if he's got some mates around in this competition. And the thing he doesn't realize is that once he's 200 pounds, he is without question, I think, worse than the blue marlin to try to catch. Because he's smart. Because he was a scaredy cat once when he was small. Now he's not, and he doesn't realize what a motherfucker he is. So it's a really interesting personalities to these three critters. And I think as you get to know them and everything, it's part of the fascination of trying to catch them. Although I got to tell you, the black marlin and everything, he ate us up. I mean, we got eaten up 3-4 times on the reef for a month, and you can't tease them. You just can't. I mean, they see bang, they hit the thing, and they hit that goddamn teaser so hard, I think it knocks their teeth out, and they go away. They go back and hide in a rock or something.
There it is.
So, obviously, he's learned about what these fish do.
Well,
how
he's
they
got a
look.
million hours out there.
Million
for one
hours.
thing.
So
Yeah.
what you're going to do in the Bahamas, I think, is fascinating because you're going to be there for 2 months.
Yeah.
And the wahoo and the marlin and the bonefish, and like you said, to watch and see them.
Yeah.
That to me is almost as much fun as trying to yank on their faces.
Well, that was it. When I went to Tropic Star with this friend and some other guys, I wanted to watch. I didn't necessarily want to yank on one. I'm glad the one I caught was only 250 pounds, a blue, because that was manageable.
Right.
Then my friend John had 2 450s that he caught, which that's a yank. On 80, I guess we're 80-pound test.
Right.
That's a strain.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm not good at offshore either. Because when especially the old boats with the diesel, you're backing down, you're sucking that black smoke, you know?
Forget that.
And pretty soon it's like, can I go home now?
Yeah, I know. You have a little bit of the mal de mer, right?
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about hurricanes before, we get to, down the road.
Carl tell you that story?
I want to hear about Irma and some of these big bad storms,
Well,
the sounds and the personality of a storm.
Yeah, the weird thing with Irma was I was at Burning Man and totally cut off from civilization. I guess you can get a cell phone signal there now. I just pretend you can't because I love being separate from the world. And I surfaced because my wife was in L.A. Her daughter was having a baby. And I was going to leave Burning Man and go there for a little bit. And so I call her as soon as I stuck my head up. She said, "You got to go home. There's a hurricane." I went, "Oh." So I, looked and try and figure this out. And I said, "Oh, crap." So I went to L.A. for a couple hours and took the red eye home and then got home and started putting stuff up. And then the hurricane happened. And I stayed because our house is... It's new. It was built in about 15 years ago, whatever. It was built by a contractor for himself. And it's hurricane glass. It's solid. It's up 12 feet. I took the big boat, stretched it across our canal, which is just mangroves on both sides. It did fine. Maybe blew 140 at the house. It just looked like it had been spray painted with green confetti, but nothing happened. The whole house, nothing happened. I was there. Jimmy called me about 5 a.m. It was still kind of dark, but the wind was really picking up. And he was wondering if I was okay, Carl called me the night before. He said, "Are you out of there? Or were you?" I said, "No, I'm staying." He said, and so, and Carl wrote his column in the Herald. It was talking to this person in the Keys who was staying. And I did say, he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Carl, I've never felt more alive." And that appeared in the Herald.
Oh, that's good.
And people called my wife and said, "Is that Fred he's talking about?"
They knew. But your Porsche took a little road trip down.
Well, I had an old Boxster, I think it's 2005, that I didn't want to put it outside, but so anyway, I drove it on a piece of 10 mil plastic and tied it up like a Hershey's Kiss. And it floated under the house and banged into some stuff.
With the weight?
I should have tied it off to the side, to the columns, but I didn't. I didn't think about it floating around.
Really?
I
I can't imagine that it would end up floating.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
How much water did you have in that garage?
About 18 inches. And the Porsche doesn't have much clearance, but it doesn't weigh much. So it floated around and banged into some stuff.
Right.
So I had a little bit of body work, but Geico was very happy they didn't have a total loss on a car. So they fixed it.
You've had a big life. Oh, my.
I've gotten to do a lot of neat stuff.
What are you looking forward to next?
Well,
Besides the Bahamas for 2
months.
months.
Well, in the fall, I'm going to go to Indonesia for 3 months by myself, just wandering.
By yourself?
Serendipity. Yeah. I know I'm going to start on the northern end of Sulawesi. There's a couple epic dive areas there where it's some of the last healthy coral reef in the world. They're accessible from the beach. I always liked Southeast Asia. I've traveled there a lot. I love the culture, the food, the people. So I'm looking forward to Indonesia. I've never been there, but there's 17,000 islands in Indonesia. I don't know much about the fishing. I don't know I never hear of it. I hear of diving and all, but I don't hear so much of that.
You like diving into the unknown, don't you?
Well, I don't know the unknown. I love the creatures. I love the critters. I love the light, how all the life works together, and just I love where they came from. How did all of them evolve? What is, the whole evolution thing is so freaking fascinating.
Yeah, but I think you meant about traveling alone and just escaping reality, right?
Yeah.
I haven't traveled alone all that much. This will be the first time I've really struck out on a long journey by myself, but I always dreamed of it. But I had the office. I had to be back on Monday or next Monday or something. And this will be totally open-ended. I'm going September 15th. I got the plane reservation September 15th. I got one home on December 15th. So in between,
who knows?
I don't know. You meet people and people say, go here, go there, don't go there, don't do this, do that. I don't know. I meet people very easily. So, and there's always Aussies. You go sit at a bar with the Aussies. You pull up a chair to their table and, hey, mate, come on in.
Your family immediately.
Yeah, they're just the greatest. And they're the ones running all the dive ops and everything in Indonesia, I think, at least from what I can tell. But I don't know. It'll be serendipitous. I'll figure it out. I'm not taking a fly rod. I thought of it, but I'm going to see what kind of fishing's there.
But is this more of like a travel journey or a personal journey?
I don't think there's any grand overarching personal voyage of discovery or something there. It's just looking for new experiences and meeting people and places and looking at a healthy reef. I mean, I grew up here. I first started diving down here in 1965 when there were forests of staghorn and elkhorn. Maryland Shoal was just all this staghorn.
Wait.
And then Lou Key was full of elkhorn. And now you go there and there's a scattered little sprig here and there.
Wow.
So that's just so different, even in my short lifespan.
And elkhorn, that's a coral?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, I thought of something else.
No, it looks a little more like elk because it's a little branchy like that. Where staghorn is more like a staghorn antelope.
And the reef really took a big hit last year because that water temperature was over 100 degrees. Is that correct?
I think it's been going on, and it's been a curious thing about what is the water quality that's making a difference. We had a simultaneous die-off of all the long-spine sea urchins in the Caribbean basin back about 30 years ago, and they were a non-discriminate grazer on the reef. At night, they were out calling all over, eating algae and stuff like that. Well, when all those died, you lost your thing that pruned the algae and kept it from clogging stuff up.
And now you have spinning fish.
Yeah, that's something really interesting that they haven't. I think they're on to it, but I think they're going to have a really hard time finding out what it is, because if it is some toxic, like something that a microorganism's making, it'll probably degrade in the dead fish before they can figure out what's there.
Right. That's probably the biggest looming thing that the Keys has right now.
Yeah, it seems, of course, seems to be affecting the sawfish predominantly. You see them dying, and then sometimes they're spinning rays, and I've seen Goliath grouper spinning, and I've heard it. Well, I saw a video of that looked rather weird. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard too many reports of tarpon or bonefish or permit. Some. But I haven't heard a lot of dead birds, which you would think if it was in the water column, if the little fish were all getting toxed up, then the birds would be dying from it. But
that's good for you because now you have more roadkill.
I have more
statues.
Roadkill. I have to patrol the shorelines and drive around looking for dead birds.
It's a scary time right now.
Well, last summer was the bad one to me. That water, when I'd be driving to work over Niles Channel, I thought it was crossing the Chesapeake. It was gray-green. Mm-hmm. It was just ugly water. And once I was coming back from the Bahamas, and I was in 450 feet of water, and And the watercolor was off, and I'm looking up saying, well, there's American shoals out there. I'm looking at my GPS saying, I'm in 450 feet of water. This is not blue, crystal clear, Gulf Streamy looking water. This is shit water from somewhere and somehow. And then you got inshore, and like Lou Key was literally undivable for most of the summer. I think I went there twice.
God.
And I like spending Sundays there, go out with people, and we, have cocktails, make food, and snorkel, lounge around. It's a perfect place to hang out.
Right.
But it was not too usable last summer. And I think that's my theory, is it threw things out of balance and allowed some other organism to proliferate that has the toxic thing in it, which is related to the ciguatera, the organism that makes ciguatera, but it's not ciguatera. You know how when you don't know a fish has got ciguatera. I'm not sure they do. I'm not sure if they feel bad or not. You can't tell. But you cannot tell a fish has ciguatera until you eat it and have symptoms.
Right.
So I got it once eating a small 3-foot barracuda. I thought I just had the flu, but then I grabbed a beer and it felt hot. That's the weird thing. You get a reversal of hot and cold, the sensation.
Wow.
And that's what they call pathognomonic, meaning it's that disease. It's specific to that disease. You grab a cold beer, it feels hot. You grab a hot coffee, it feels cold.
Right.
How that happens.
How weird is that?
I don't know.
Right?
But, so like Jeff Cardenas had it pretty bad for a couple months from a big black grouper that he and his daughter Lily ate. He was pretty sick. A lot of neurologic things. And, so it happens around here.
Yeah.
Even in a black grouper, which you wouldn't expect.
Do you ever foresee yourself moving out of the Keys, or is this your home?
No, that's it. Rita, my wife, has been here 2 years longer than me. She came down to start a theater when she was right out of school with her boyfriend at the time, became husband. They started Green Street Theater and made a real dent in Key West. And Tennessee Williams, they did a Tennessee Williams play for the first one. He came and rewrote the ending of it and was there for all. She's had a great career.
Yeah.
She's doing a play in Key West right now called Lifespan of a Fact, which is about, she's a magazine editor and there's a writer and a fact checker. It's this fast-paced interplay.
And she also worked with the Film Commission?
She was the film commissioner of Monroe County for 20 years, in charge of getting films and commercials. And so Bloodline was her real swan song.
Did you like that, Bloodline?
Bloodline was great.
Wasn't it?
Yeah. I thought it was one of the first that ever caught the essence of the Keys. Had the people, the places, and the things. They did it right.
Yeah, I thought it was very good.
It was
Did
funny.
you know all the characters in the movie?
Well, we were around some. We became good friends with the showrunner, the main writer and the showrunner. And his assistant in New York would call me and say, okay, they're fishing in the mangroves at night. What are they fishing for? I'd say, snook. So that opening scene in Bloodline, they're going through the dark in Bucky's Ditch, kind of, right? And they come across this black guy fishing. They say, hey, Fred, what are you doing? Oh, I'm fishing for snook.
Perfect.
Yeah, stuff like that. And little things about, I don't know, lobster or this and that or whatever. Yeah. They had pretty much veracity. They did mess with a little bit. They'd say, I'm going to No Name Key, and like it's 30 minutes away, kind of, or 20 minutes. But I think that's just because they were fascinated with the name.
Yeah, for sure.
They didn't put Dildo Key in there, though.
Just right there in front of Flamingo. Well,
yeah, but it was good. It was a good story, and I thought they treated the Keys well, and it was pretty compelling, and it was real twisty too.
It was good,
super interesting.
Sure. Well, Fred, thank you so much.
Absolutely,
I really appreciate you coming over and giving us the most amazing story about your life and your friends in the world of fishing.
Yeah, it's so fortunate to have been here and hang out with. I get introduced to flats fishing, and it's became much more something I want to do more than dive. Right. It becomes a lifestyle. You get consumed, you get embedded, and it gets inside your skin, and it's never going to go away. Nope. Yeah. Nope. Hopefully not. No, it's sad that the bonefish population is taking such a dive, but they're coming back. There's lots of small ones. They're just not the big ones. You know, the Bonefish tournament had to alter a little bit and put tournament in it to make it a little more interesting, so there weren't so many goose eggs on the scoreboard and this and that. I just hadn't fished it in a while. I don't know. Once you had those crazy big ones, I don't know.
I know.
Well, thanks for coming on, Fred.
Absolutely, Nicky.
Really appreciate it. Thanks
good meeting you.
Thanks for bringing your sculpture, too. I love this.
That was awesome. Thanks, buddy.
All righty.
All right, thank you, Fred.
Appreciate it.
When I saw his West Side Story, when I saw his just a